All right. So once this DS comes out and scoping begins, the public comment period will be 30 to 60 days. We've combined the regulations for the federal regulations for NEPA, the SEPA regulations. So you'll have a time period that's within that time frame. The public scoping meetings will be in a variety of locations. We at a minimum have to provide 3. There may be a number more. Comments. You can provide comments at these public scoping meetings. I do want to say they are not public hearings. That distinction may strike you as what's so important about that. Sometimes people think these meetings are hearings, but people have the opportunity to get up to the microphone and provide input. But also, written comments can be sent by hard copy, email, and online to the agencies. You don't need to do both. If you want to, that's great. But you do not have to come in person and then also provide written comments. I want to stop on this slide a bit and talk. This is information I want to provide that relates to your scoping comments. A couple of things are, first, there are a number of organizations and people who are represented here by those organizations that have already provided letters to the agencies. I received the letters, the governor receives the letters, our agency director has received the letters, as well as at the county and the Corps. These letters have been really well crafted, really well thought out, and they are, for all technical purposes, scoping letters. They are saying, agencies, we want you to look at A, B, C, and D, whether it's rail impacts, greenhouse gases, wetland impacts, stormwater. We have received a number of those from jurisdictions, from individuals, and from groups. What I want to say about scoping is that you saw from that timeline there is a set sequence of steps, and it is critical that the agencies follow those steps in the exact regulatory order that they are defined. We can't get ahead of ourselves. So what I'm suggesting to those organizations, Whatcom Docs, you can see a couple of representatives there, those letters make sure to resubmit to us at the scoping period, because then and only then are they considered formal scoping comments. So I want people that have already done some of that to please keep that in mind, resubmit it to us, put a cover letter on it, so that it's considered one of the formal scoping comments. The other thing I would say is some of you may have come to this meeting wanting to tell us about concerns, specific concerns you have about the project, and what worries you about it, what should or shouldn't be done about it. Those are scoping comments. So when we have our Q&A portion of this workshop, it will be very important for you to recognize that we need questions from you, so the whole audience benefits, about scoping and the environmental review process. The comments that are specific about your concerns are scoping comments. We value them. They come later. They come when scoping opens. So I just really want to emphasize that. I don't want anybody put off by that if we go, hey, that's a scoping comment. So that's why I'm emphasizing that, because we need to follow the steps in order. So that's just one thing I really wanted to emphasize when we get to the Q&A. So, next slide. Let me think if there's anything else that I want to add about the kinds of comments. Specific is good. If you can be more specific, the better. Vague comments, we take them into account. We take every comment that comes in very seriously, but if you can be specific, that is very helpful to us. If there's a certain geographic area that you feel needs to be covered related to a specific concern, let us know. Comment letters that are petitions that are all the same, they count, they're important. But the ones that have specificity give us guidance on what to put into that environmental impact statement, what should be included. Group comment letters are great. You know, if you're part of a group, you represent a number of people, they can be submitted representing your group or individuals. Also, we know that some of you are lay people. This may be the first time you've even heard much about EIS. Don't let that inhibit you or prevent you from submitting your comments of concerns. We know there are going to be people all the way from not having a lot of knowledge to people who are experts. This is their professional area of expertise. Lawyers, health administrators, etc. So we take all of these very seriously. They will be reviewed by all 3 co-lead agencies to determine the scope. After scoping, all right. After that comment period, all of those are going to be collected. They are going to be carefully reviewed. They will each get attention by all 3 co-lead agencies. You don't have to send them to all 3 of us. I think they go to Tyler. Do they go to Tyler? Tyler will collect those. And we will go over them. The co-leads, we're going to do an optional step. Because this project is so important to so many people, this isn't required, but we're going to put out a scoping report. And that will basically summarize, here's the kinds of things we've been hearing, some other information in it. And I don't know what all those components are. That's why I'll probably have to look to my co-lead compatriots to identify that perhaps more in the Q&A. And then the agencies decide the scope of the EIS. We take all that input from the tribes, from other agencies, from you, and decide the scope. I do want to tell you also that we're coordinating very closely with other agencies. I've already met with a number, probably 10 different state agencies that have a piece of expertise related to transportation impacts, related to cultural resources, etc. They are very well clued into the importance of providing comments and their expertise to the agencies. So, I covered NEPA-SEPA 101, where we're at in the process, what the sequencing is, what a rough timeline might be, what triggers scoping, and how you can most effectively comment. And then up to where we issue the draft EIS. So Tyler, as my compatriot here, will cover what happens after that step.
Thank you, Jeannie. Very good job laying out through scoping. Again, I want to introduce myself, and I want to make sure everybody... Can the back of the room hear me all right? Great. So I'm Tyler Schroeder. I'm the Whatcom County Planning Manager. I'm also the designated SEPA official. So in coordination with the Army Corps and Ecology, as Jeannie laid out, I'll be the representative for the county that works through that in coordination with other employees that we have at Whatcom County Planning. I want to make a point of emphasis of what Jeannie was indicating. She led the presentation through the scoping process. And it's important that everybody in the audience realizes that the scoping process is really going to be that next step of public participation. And it's important that the specific comments and keeping involved through that scoping process, that everybody understands that that'll likely be early summer to midsummer. And if there's a large crowd here today, and I thank you all for your community engagement, and make sure that you continue through the path as we move forward through this process, because it is fairly complex. And it does take a little bit, especially this large of a process. So one of the points that Jeannie was talking about was the scoping report. Likely that scoping report will be issued in letter form or another form that recaps what comments were submitted and how those comments were used through the scoping process, and where the draft EIS will be moving forward in development of it. So as we move to the next slide here, and it's one of these large exploded views, as Jeannie puts them. and it's the beginning of the preparing of the draft EIS. If you take a look at it, this exploded view is approximately fall of this year. Again, I'm going to put the quotation or the asterisk there that these are approximate, but we're trying our best to give the public some guidance on when it's going to happen. So after the scoping report comes out, the agencies begin to prepare the draft EIS. So let me read this for a second. Begin preparing draft EIS. The contractor, under direction of the co-lead agencies, prepare the draft EIS according to the results of the scoping process. So again, on the timeline, that's about fall of 2012, so coming through. So getting a little bit more specific on the development of that draft EIS. The agencies will provide direction to the consultant that's selected on the research and the writing of that draft EIS. This will include assembling and reviewing and evaluating the information, whether it be technical reports or studies that have to do with the project. There is also the opportunity, or maybe the need will arise, that additional studies will need to be prepared. An analysis of the project or the impact to the elements of the environment may need to happen. If it's shown through the scoping report and the scoping process that those studies haven't been prepared yet. One important point I want to kind of bring forward to the public is that these additional studies may be prepared by the applicant. If the applicant prepares them, they either can be prepared by the applicant or the consultant once that consultant's hired. I want to stress that if the applicant does prepare those studies, which the applicant is proposing to prepare studies for the scoping process, the agencies will peer review those or make sure they are adequate and accurate for the use of the EIS, and that will be in coordination with the consultant that we hire. So as we move forward and get a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of the draft EIS, that draft EIS will include the description of the project action as well as the alternatives that are acknowledged. It'll include the existing conditions and the impacts to the affected environment. It'll also include a section of mitigation or measures to avoid or reduce the impacts associated with the proposal. So as you can see, this draft EIS is leading right along with what's kind of determined through the scoping process. So what the draft EIS is the agency's first go around at the EIS, and it leads into the public comment on that draft EIS. So once the agencies and the consultants have done the technical work on the studies needed and the reviewing of those studies, and really the technical writing of what's going to be likely a fairly complex and lengthy document, the agencies turn out to issue that draft EIS. So in this timeline, that issuance of the draft EIS, and this is really important that I want to kind of bring forward, is that on this timeline, that issuance of the draft EIS is in 2013. That's a long time from now, whether it be a year or give or take around. But there'll be a lot of work that the agencies will be doing to prepare that draft EIS. So there's the public participation section of the scoping process that Jeannie discussed that will be coming in this summer. Then there's some direction that the agencies move forward and start preparing that technical writing. And that could take a year, give or take, even longer. And during that time frame, there's not as much public participation in the process. But once the issuance of the draft EIS, once the draft EIS is issued, that public participation picks back up, so there are public hearings associated with the draft EIS. So let me discuss this. I probably went over it. Issue the draft EIS, open public comment period, and have a public hearing. The draft EIS is circulated so that the public and other agencies are given an opportunity to comment on its accuracy and content before it's finalized.